Hello folks, I'm John Myrie and welcome to the Wisconsin Northland Outdoors. On this week's show we have tips and reports for you from Jarrett McCarthy down at Hayward Bait and Bottle. And then we talk spring fishing for walleyes and smallmouth bass with Hayward area fishing guide Noah Glitto. Lots to cover on this week's show, all coming up right after these messages.
At Hayward Power Sports, we know it's fun to roam the boat shows. But remember, we have awesome deals every day, and we'll be here long after the shows. As the 2026 continue to roll in, we're making insane deals on our remaining 2025 models. Save nearly $13,000 on a 2025 Lund 1775 Impact XS. Or how about $20,000 in savings on a remaining 22-foot Bennington pontoon? Hayward Power Sports has a huge selection of new Lund and Tracker fishing boats. Plus, we have our largest selection ever of pontoons in stock with gorgeous Benningtons and the #1 selling pontoons in the world, Sun Tracker. Hayward Power Sports also carries every major outboard with Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, and Mercury with the best warranty offers of the year going on now. And while the boat shows find you the best financing for the dealer, we work with our banks to get the best financing for you. Our boat show is continuous, so come see us today at Hayward Power Sports. Just 10 minutes east of Hayward on Highway 77. We're at haywardpowersports.com.
The Hayward Lakes Visitors and Convention Bureau in Sawyer County, Wisconsin welcomes you to our Northwoods hometown. No matter the season, no matter the activity, you'll always be surrounded by our great outdoors. What more could you ask for in a vacation destination? Woods, waters, world-class events. Contact us for information on lodging, dining, attractions, events, trail conditions, and more. Order your free vacation guide and start planning your getaway today. Visit us at haywardlakes.com or call 1-800-724-2992.
Riding along in my automobile.
Bumping into things unexpectedly? Make your first choice for collision repair. Ernie's Auto Body, featuring the most advanced collision repair facility in Northwest Wisconsin. With a state-of-the-art spray bake down draft paint booth for that better-than-new finish, laser technology for precision frame alignment, loaner cars available, computerized estimates, written guarantees, and documented unmatched customer service, the clear choice is Ernie's Auto Body, south of Hayward on Highway 63 and Nursery Road, where quality is no accident.
Lynn's Custom Meats and Catering welcomes you to stop by for their great lunch menu. And while you're there, Lynn's also has a great selection of custom cut meats and sausages, as well as many varieties of snack sticks, jerky, fresh cheese curds, and much more. Lynn's is open Mondays through Fridays from 9 to 5:30 and 9 to 4 on Saturdays. Lynn's Custom Meats and Catering in Hayward.
Today, anglers fish longer. Today, anglers fish harder. Today, anglers rely more than ever on their electronics. It all comes down to catching more fish, and today, anglers rely on Amped Outdoors lithium batteries, period. Visit ampedoutdoors.com today to power your outdoor experience.
We're recording this week down at Hayward Bait and Bottle, and fishing season is well underway now, but temperatures really aren't changing. Water temperature has just been basically stagnant in that 55-degree range and even colder on some lakes.
Yeah, I was out on Friday and Saturday night, and, I had, on Friday night, I had 53, 54, and then we had that big wind on Saturday, and she dropped down to, 51.7, 51, something like that. So, yeah, we need some warm weather to get these fish thinking it's spring again here.
And it's with the cold front, what I noticed out there, too, is the fish really seem to be stuck tight to the bottom. They're just not much up at the bottom swimming.
Yeah, yep. We saw the same thing. Friday night they were really active. We had a really nice day on Friday, and then, as soon as that cold front hit, yeah, those fish developed lockjaw in a hurry, and they were glued to the bottom.
Well, the big thing a lot of people go after is the walleyes, and I don't know if you had any good reports on the walleyes. I know people were catching fish, and we caught fish in my boat, but it just wasn't what I normally expect to see the second week of the fishing season.
Yeah, it wasn't anything stellar. We had the people out for the Treelands Challenge this last weekend, and everybody out there caught some fish, but it was nothing to write home about. It was tough conditions, but people made the most of it. We saw some nice fish be caught, but they definitely had to work for them.
What has been the best bait producing wise? A jig in the minnow yet, or a bobber in the minnow?
Yeah, jig in the minnow, something that you can keep close to the boat, with a big wind or what have you. It's really tough to run a bobber out there just because of how much movement there is in the bobber. But it's something that you can hold nice and tight to bottom so those fish can find it pretty easily and not have to work all that hard for it.
And I don't know if anybody's getting any on crankbaits, but I know the smallmouth bass been hitting jerkbaits and crankbaits, but I'm sure though some of the walleyes are too. It's just a matter of hitting the right place and the time.
Yeah, absolutely. You get to those protected shorelines, or you get to that part of the evening where the wind starts to calm down, those fish will get a little bit more aggressive. But yeah, the bass have definitely been going on the crankbaits, and yeah, there's a couple walleyes being caught on them as well.
That's been the big thing. I know a lot of people have been coming up here that I've been running into. They're going after the smallmouth on some of the big lakes, and they're getting them on jerkbaits. So things like the Rapala Maverick and, the X-Raps, that type of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of different stuff. A lot of people think that when you come up north, it's all walleyes and muskies up here. But, man, we got some fantastic bass fisheries up here, and, those bronzebacks, man, do they fight.
They do, and I've actually had good reports on largemouth, too, believe it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the lakes around here that have a few less smallmouth in them. We got a lot of really good largemouth lakes around here, so definitely one of those fish that are definitely moving in shallower and can be caught even along shorelines right now as well.
And when the smallmouth, that jerkbait bite, that's going to stay pretty strong here until we get somewhere in that low 60-degree range, and then it'll start to taper off, and you have to, go to things like, hair jigs and Ned rigs and that stuff sometimes.
Yeah, yep. Those fish will start to calm down. Those fish are grabbing those jerkbaits right now, but as that water warms up and as we get closer to those fish getting ready to spawn, you'll have to slow things down and start crawling things along the bottom is what most people do.
Let's talk about panfish. That's a popular thing, and by this time of year, most years, we're seeing a bunch of panfish up shallow. Have you had any reports on it? I know I'm not seeing any up shallow.
It's different based on the lake. We did a couple of lakes on Friday, and one of the lakes that we did was a smaller lake, and going through some of the back bays, we had 57, 58 degrees, and a couple when we started, when the sun was hitting, and we had almost nothing back there. And, one of those muddy bays you'd expect those fish to be. The temperatures out there and the wind that we've had, just nothing stable. Even though we've got warm water back in some of those bays, I just don't think it's been enough or long enough for those fish to really feel comfortable about moving in. So right now we're seeing a lot of those fish that are still just kind of in that staging pattern in that, 6 to 12 feet of water, whatever kind of structure is outside of those bays. But, we got some warm weather on the horizon. So as soon as we get, 2, 3, 4 days of steadiness, I think those fish will run up to the shallows.
Seems like almost a magic number for a lot of different things, but especially the panfish seems to be that 60-degree mark.
Yeah, 60 degree is kind of when everything kicks off. The crappies are really starting to think about spawning. The bluegills come up to the reeds and start really feeding. The bass are always up there as well, chasing them around. So are the pikes. So, we're just kind of waiting on Mother Nature to say, all right, everybody come up shallow. So,
there's a lot of different ways of catching them crappies and panfish when they're up shallow. One of the simple ways is just a bobber or a float in any type of a small bait, whether it's a little thing like, a little fly or, plastics, any of that stuff. You throw it out there and don't leave it sit. Kind of move it a little bit, twitch it a little bit, and usually you'll get fish. You want to keep it real high up over the top of the fish, though.
Yeah, you really do. And, I made the biggest difference on Friday while we were out, and we had two different presentations in the boat. We had, my fishing partner, Rob, he was using a plastic tube, and I had live bait. We were just kind of going back and forth, seeing what worked better. And when we started there, we tried two different depths. We had, Rob was fishing probably about 3 feet under the surface, and I was probably about 5-6 feet down just to see if those fish were hanging off to the bottom. And sure enough, within the first 30 seconds, that bait that's 3 foot underneath the surface disappears just like that. So it's like, all right, these crappies are feeding up, so time to move things up off the bottom. So yeah, your location, no matter what you're using in the water column, it makes a big difference. And there's a lot of different things out there that you can put on that hook that those crappie will go after.
If you find the crappies up real shallow and they move up shallow, they will at some point here. And actually pre-spawn, they'll move up if you get a warm day. Sometimes you throw a bobber out there and you're fishing under the fish if you're in 2 or 3 feet of water. Little tiny crankbaits and small lures will work better.
Yeah, absolutely. Repa's got a few lures out there, as well as another couple companies that, they dive a foot, 2 feet. And, when you toss them, they'll start to float up or what have you. Just keep it in that fish's face. But, yeah, a crankbait this time of year, a lot of people don't think about crankbaits or stick baits for panfish. But, yeah, highly effective method.
I've caught them on topwater baits, believe it or not, when they're up high like that.
I believe it. Yep, they are feeding up. That's what they're doing.
Northern pike fishing, anything going there, usually that's pretty good. They like that cold water.
Yeah, they really do. Yep, we've seen a lot of northers being caught, some really healthy ones too, a lot of them off the flowage or what have you. But yeah, they're coming off a live bait and just about everything that everyone's throwing for walleyes out there. So yeah, it's been a really good bite lately.
And one thing I should mention too, northern pike are great eating folks out there because, if you want a lot of fish to eat, we got lakes up here that actually have a 10 bag limit on the pike.
Yeah, we got a surplus of pike up here. So if you're in the mood for a fish fry, we definitely got a handful of lakes up there where they are encouraging the processing of those pikes, so come on up and grab some.
Yeah, do release the bigger ones, though. Anything over about 30, 32 inches or a real healthy-looking one, I put that back. Down here at the shop, Jarrett, you guys got everything they need for the fishing season, I know?
Yeah, absolutely. We got everything that you might need to throw any of those panfish, bass, or walleye in here.
And folks, if you haven't been in here for a while, come on in because they've completely redone the inside of the store, made it a lot more convenient and a lot easier to find stuff that you want to fish with.
Yep, we just have the challenge of getting around the road construction out there, but you can get in.
yeah, that's been a kind of a big deal this year. Anyway, Jarrett, I want to thank you for coming on here.
And thanks for having me again, John.
Well, folks, we need to take a break right now and hear from some of the fine sponsors that make this show possible every week. When we come back, we'll be talking spring walleye and bass fishing with Hayward Area Fishing Guide Noah Glitto. So stay tuned. We'll be back right after these messages. Hayward Bait and Bottle is your one-stop for the Hayward area's largest selection of rods, reels, lures, fishing electronics, boating supplies, and much more. Whether you fish for bass, walleyes, panfish, or muskies, gear up for the upcoming fishing season. And if you're getting ready for the spring turkey season too, they also have just about everything you'll need for a successful season. In the bottle shop, you'll find a full selection of beer and liquor. Hayward Bait and Bottle is your one-stop sport and bottle shop. There's no time like the present to explore Hayward, Wisconsin, one of the Midwest's most popular vacation destinations. With crystal clear lakes for water sports and fishing, miles of trails for riding snowmobiles, ATVs, cross-country skiing, hiking, and mountain biking, this area is buzzing with activity year-round. Combined with charming local shops and a variety of Northwoods dining options, Hayward is certain to offer both adventure and relaxation for everyone. Plan your trip today and find everything you need on the Hayward Area Chamber of Commerce website. From events and attractions to local dining, shopping, and lodging, visit haywardareachamber.com and start your next adventure now.
The fishing opener has come and gone. If you fish from an old boat, from shore, or didn't go out at all, we can help. Hayward Power Sports has an awesome selection of new Lund boats built by fishermen for fishermen for the last 75 years, and no boat retains their value better. Or check out a Tracker, America's #1 selling aluminum fishing boat. Whatever brand you choose, they'll be powered by Mercury Outboards, rigged and ready. Don't miss another day of fishing. See us at Hayward Power Sports, just 10 minutes east of Hayward on Highway 77.
In the Northwoods, a lake property is more than just a cabin. It's where memories are made. If you're buying lakefront property, you want someone who understands what makes each lake special. And if you're selling, your property deserves more than just a sign in the yard. It deserves its story told. I'm Megz Steinmetz with Real Estate by Megz, a national 30 under 30 realtor, lifelong angler, and a Northwoods lake specialist. Because no two lakes are the same and neither are the properties. Find me online or on social media, Real Estate by Megz. That's Megz with a Z.
Welcome back to another segment of this week's Wisconsin Northland Outdoors, and this part of the show is brought to you by the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau. For more information on lodging and vacationing here in the Hayward Lakes area, check out their website at haywardlakes.com. Well, folks, one of the guys that get on here quite often is Noah Glitto. I had a chance to talk to Noah the other day on the phone about the spring fishing for both walleyes and smallmouth bass, with lots of great tips and information from Noah. Noah, good to have you on here. Get you on here every time I get.
Yeah, it's good to be on the show, talk about some fishing, spread some information for people that want to get out and explore the outdoors.
Well, Noah, that cold spell earlier in the month really kind of put us back some. I think we're running behind on weed growth, and even the water temperatures, everything seems to be running behind by a week or maybe more, maybe two.
It definitely postponed our weed growth on some of our deeper, clearer lakes that stay a little bit colder, like Grindstone and the Coudray and Round Lake. Those lakes are still in in the upper 40s for temperature, and they were, in the low mid 40s pretty much since opener. So weed growth is pretty minimal. On your darker water systems where, they've warmed up a little bit, your shallower lakes, there is some decent weed growth starting, but not quite what you would expect for this time of year. Crappies are starting to kind of stage up, getting ready to spawn. So it's getting a little close on some of those flowage, the darker water systems, but they're not quite ready on those clear water systems.
If somebody's after walleyes here this month, what kind of tips can you give them? I mean, the old jig and minnow seems to work. I know earlier in the season here, they really seem to be nailed down to the bottom. You had to almost drag it past their nose, but as we get farther in the month, they're getting a little bit more active, and maybe crankbaits. And what have you been finding?
I've been starting my days with a jig and a minnow presentation that fishing weed lines and fishing near wood and fishing rock bars and points, trying to get some of those active fish, see what's going on. But sometimes jigging a minnow is just a little bit too finesse for them, and pulling something out a little bit more aggressive like a jerkbait in some of those shallower fisheries where you're fishing, 8, 6, 10 feet of water even. Those walleyes will really perk up on a pop, pop, pause. And they'll come out and they'll hit that jerkbait pretty hard. It's a pretty fun bite when you get on a jerkbait bite catching walleyes. So it's out there. It's out there to do. Jigging the minnow, a lot of guys are fishing a slip bobber minnow right now because the bite's kind of stale. Fish are just kind of being a little nippy and a little picky. So that's real effective if fishing is getting kind of tough. I'm not a big leech fan until water starts to warm up. But once that water starts to warm up, you'll start seeing guys wanting to use leeches and slip bobbers, which is super effective. But right now, you can do pretty good on reaction-style baits and jig and minnows.
When you're trying to feed them, the bobber bite or even a minnow, most of the time you're actually trying to get the fish to eat something, I think. But when you're looking at, minnow baits, jerk baits, that type of bait, that's more of a aggression strike. I mean, it's just in their face, they snap at it more than they are trying to eat it, I think.
Yeah, it really gets them angry almost, and they will really come slap it. A lot of times they'll get, one hook in their mouth, but 2 hooks in the side of their body. It's like they were body slamming it, trying to knock it out so that they maybe come back around and eat it while it's stunned. I'm not sure, but they go for it and they hit it pretty hard. It's a fun bite when you get on a bite where they're hitting a blade bait or a crankbait or a jerk bait, something that's a reaction that you're snapping it, and they're coming and hitting it hard versus playing a little finesse game where they're, picking it up with their mouth and slowly swimming away.
You find that going after them with lures like the jerk baits and stuff is better in the evening or later in the day, or is it pretty much an all-day bite thing?
I think when water temperatures are cold, it helps to kind of let the water warm up a little bit before they really will go on that reaction. You kind of want those fish to slide up to be in a position ready to ambush, whereas, when it's early in the morning and maybe fish are cold, you might want to start with something a little more finesse. It's a good idea to practice changing it up a little bit and seeing what works. Give the jig and a minnow 30 minutes, give the jerkbait 30 minutes, give the blade bait 30 minutes. Give different lures X amount of time in different areas to try to really decipher what those fish are going in on. That's how you'll dial in and catch the most fish.
I know one mistake I think a lot of people make is they'll take too shallow a running jerkbait, and nowadays we've got some jerk baits out there like a Rapala Maverick, which you can get down 6, 8, 10 feet and make it stop, pause, and work it pretty good right down in the edge of the new growth weeds. Yeah,
there's quite a few different brands that are making, plus version jerk baits that'll go down, 10 feet, 11, 12, even 14 feet. I've got some jerk baits to go down to. And another little tip that a lot of people don't really utilize is Storm makes what's called a suspend strip. It's a lead strip with a little bit of like a sticky, kind of like a Post-it note that you stick on a bait, and you can add some weight to that jerk bait, which will make it, sink slowly or dive a little faster. And that can really, really get that bait into an area where most anglers can't get their bait. There's a lot of things you can do to the baits with a little modification, and I know a lot of the pro bass anglers do that to a lot of their jerk baits because they may want it with the head down pose or the tail down, or they want it to synchronize or be neutral buoyant. You can really dial it in with them suspend dots or suspend strips. Yeah, it's definitely something that in today's world of fishing, you got to stand out a little bit. You can buy the latest and greatest, newest lure, but you want to be a little bit different than everybody else.
Well, folks, you know we need to take yet another break and hear from even more of the fine sponsors that bring their show to you every week. When we come back, we'll have the second part of that talk I had with fishing guide Noah Glitto. So stay tuned. We'll be back right after these messages. Hey folks, come on over to Hayward Ace Hardware and check out the area's largest selection of firearms, ammo, and accessories. We carry top brands like Browning and Sig Sauer, and we have a great selection of the newest and hard-to-find models. We've got a large selection of ammo with more coming in daily. If you need a scope, we carry great brands like Leupold, Hawk, and EOTech, and we'll even mount it and bore-sight it for you too. We even sell suppressors and silencers. And don't forget to check out our Guns of the Week. Huge discounts on a variety of pistols, rifles, and shotguns that change every week. So stop on in to Hayward Ace Hardware, your firearms superstore. Hayward Ace Hardware, Highway 63 North in Hayward, or give us a call at 715-634-8700.
Care for the animals with help from Hayward Feed and Seed. They offer deer corn, mineral blocks, and their famous Big Buck blend. They can also satisfy the hunger of the other animals in your life with a massive variety of dog and cat foods, along with other pet foods and large animal feeds. Plus, they have an awesome assortment of cat and dog toys, along with heated water bowls and plenty of warm, cozy bedding for all the animals in your life. Open at 8 a.m. Monday through Saturday. See the experts at Hayward Feed and Seed. Hayward Animal Hospital is a full-service medical and surgical hospital featuring on-site laboratory, digital and dental x-ray, in-house pharmacy, and online store. Dr. Ostrander has 40 years of experience dealing with illnesses, injuries, surgery, and dentistry. Hayward Animal Hospital offers urgent care appointments and emergency surgery daily. Please call early in the day for these appointments. They open at 8 a.m. Hayward Animal Hospital is located 1 mile east of Hayward on Highway B. Call 715-634-8971.
Welcome back to the last segment of this week's Wisconsin Northland Outdoors. And folks, we're going to jump right back into the second part of that talk I had with Noah Glitto. You know, we were talking about bass a little bit, but boy, I'll tell you, the smallmouth fishing has been absolutely really good this spring.
Yeah, smallmouth fishing is really starting to heat up. As that water temp starts to warm up, smallmouth are going to get up on those flats and feed. This is the time of year when you can bomb cast a paddle tail or a jerk bait or a crankbait or a hair jig and really just cover a bunch of water and catch those most aggressive fish, you know, in good numbers when they're coming in on the flats to feed.
When do you see it switch over from the more aggressive bite to the more subtle type of approach, like, you know, a Ned rig or something like that? Is it after the spawn or right away after spawn or just when?
I start to notice the difference kind of almost a little bit pre-spawn. Those fish are starting to create beds or find old beds, and they're starting to court around a little bit with each other. They're not so much focused on food, but if you put something finessey like a hair jig or a Ned rig in their area, sometimes they will pick it up. A lot of times throwing that reaction style bait, you know, if you throw it and they don't hit it, they're not interested in chasing anything down to eat it. They want the easy meal, you know, pick it up off the bottom. It ain't going anywhere from them. They don't want to chase down a jerkbait or a paddle tail if they're spending their energy finding a mate. They're building a bed.
You think a lot of people make a mistake with like a hair jig or with like a Ned rig, just plain fishing it too fast and they're not catching fish?
Most certainly. Those finesse style baits, you can really leave that hair jig on the bottom just like a Ned rig, and they'll come back and get after it. They'll come back. They can see it far in the water. They can feel it. They'll come back. They know where it's at. They, you know, if it's an easy meal, they want it. They'll come get it. Got to let that hair jig sink down. Keep your rod tip down. Don't let the wind pull your line. Using these lightweight hooks, these light weights, you know, Ned rigs and hair jigs, having your rod tip up, blowing in the wind, your line can move that lure a lot more than you think it does. Imparts some action that may not be wanted. So keep your rod tip down in the windy conditions. You know, fish real slow. And the biggest mistake I see with anglers is using the reel to move the lure. Use the rod. So you want to use the reel to pick your slack up, and you want to use the rod to move your lure. That's how you're going to be able to feel the bites. That's how you're going to be able to move the lure the proper amount and impart the action properly. If you're winding with the reel to move the lure, it can be too fast.
What do you recommend somebody who are fishing those type of finesse baits for a rod to start with, and what do you like for the line and leader setup on them?
I really like a medium light action rod, anywhere from 6'8" to 7'6", depending on the bait you're using. With the hair jigs, I like a 7'6" rod. I have a 7'10" rod for when I go up on Lake Superior. For some of those Ned rigs where you're using the rod to kind of impart tiny little actions, the shorter rod like a 6'8" or a 6'10" can be better, because the longer the rod is, every little movement you make is more, it's bigger. So you want to have the shorter rod to be able to impart the tiniest little bits of action into those baits when they're sitting on the bottom.
I think a lot of people just get overpower on the rod too. You want that medium light and fast action seems to be the ticket for those finesse presentations.
Most certainly, and having that lighter action rod when you pin up on a fish, you want to keep that rod bent, and it's a lot easier with that lighter action rod to keep the rod bent, have the proper drag set up. A lot of times we're using 8-pound, 6-pound, 5-pound test braided line, and 8-pound or 6-pound test fluorocarbon leaders. We're using light line, finesse lures, clear water, round rocks and stuff. If they get wrapped around a log or a rock or something, you want to let them take that line. You don't want to be horsing them too much. You'll cut that line off.
Definitely want to tie on 8, 10, 15 feet of fluorocarbon on there. And I know there's some new fluorocarbons out there. I got some from Berkeley. They call it gin clear. And that stuff is scary thin and scary clear. You can't even see it to tie a knot. It's that almost invisible. Yeah,
I've had really good luck with Seagar over the years. I really like the Invisex, the yellow label boxes. The red label box works excellent. I've used some Strike King, I've used P-Line, I've used lots of different brands. Like you said, Berkeley came out with the Gin Clear, that's new. It seems like it's pretty good. I've used it a couple times, but it seems like most of the brands, if they have 100% fluorocarbon, they're pretty good at doing what they do. So I would definitely recommend tying at least an 8-foot leader on a lot of these lures. Now, when you tie your line-to-line knot, you want to make sure it's smooth coming through the guides. Otherwise, if you tie it too long of a leader and it gets wound into your reel, when you go to cast, it'll catch on one of those guides and really give you a rat's nest. So I tie an FG knot, which is kind of like a Chinese finger trap, and it's really smooth coming through the guides, so it doesn't snag on anything. It's a more difficult knot to tie, but it's really effective.
And the largemouth action should start to pick up pretty good, too, here as we get a little bit warmer water.
Yep, as the water warms up and we get some fresh green weed growth, largemouth can be found in some of those weed beds, throwing a rattle trap, throwing a spinnerbait, throwing a chatterbait. And then as they start getting ready to spawn, they'll be up on logs and stuff and stumps and under docks. And you can catch them throwing jigs or wacky worms or finesse worms. And largemouth fishing is kind of an underrated thing in our area here in Hayward, Wisconsin. We have excellent largemouth fisheries all around where you can catch high numbers of fish, good sized fish, hard fighting fish, and it's a lot of family fun.
Yeah, and the thing is, of largemouth and even smallmouth, or if you're fishing reservoirs or flowages, where you're looking at docks and structure, at things like stumps and logs and stuff, you got to be a good caster, because sometimes you've got to put it within an inch or two of that stuff, and that's where, it's easier sometimes to catch the smallmouth. You don't have to be quite as precise a caster, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, especially when you're fishing a big area, a big flat, you can kind of just fan cast, bomb cast your way out, and eventually you'll catch some smallmouth. But with those largemouth, if they're buried in the weeds and they're buried on a log or a stump or next to a dock, if you don't cast right on the spot, you're not going to get them. I've heard many a story where a guy's like, he was telling me cast right here and I missed it. And I missed it and I missed it. And finally, like 10, 15 casts later, he goes, you got it that time. Boom, wham. Bass smacked his jig. He goes, how'd you know he was sitting there? He goes, well, I casted next to him 100 times. Well, you weren't close enough. Once you get right in the right spot, boom, then they're going to strike.
Yeah, definitely a strike window that they'll hit. And Noah, you got any information for people who are looking for a guide to want to get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can find my website, NoahGlittoGuideService.com. You can find my Facebook, Noah Glitto Guide Service, my Instagram, Noah Glitto Fishing. You can contact me at 612-616-6287. Text me, call me, talk fishing. If you see me at the boat landing, you see me fishing, leave a note on my truck, reach out, call, see me, talk fishing. I love talking fishing. So you see me around, let's talk some fishing. Let's do some fishing.
Well, thank you, Noah.
Well, thanks, John. Good to be on the show.
Well, folks, we're about out of time for this week's show. I'd like to remind everyone out there that if you miss a show, you can always go to our website at wnoradio.com, and from there you can link through to our podcast. You can also find the show on Spotify and all major podcast channels. And also, if you're looking for information on vacationing and lodging here in the Hayward Lakes area, check out the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau website at haywardlakes.com or the Hayward Area Chamber site at haywardareachamber.com. And lastly, if you'd like more information on hiring a fishing guide when you're up here in the Hayward area, check out our website at wnoradio.com. We've got links to just about all the different guides and a lot of information in there on guides. We're out of time for this week's show, and we'll be back again next week with another interesting show for you. Thanks for listening.
Way up in the Northland where the recreation's great. So sit back, relax, kick off your shoes, sink in your easy chair. Come on along, listen with me, I'm gonna take you there to our Wisconsin Outdoors, our Wisconsin Outdoors.
This program has been produced and hosted entirely by Wisconsin Northland Outdoor Communications.